My name is Daniel Pierce, and I haven't slept through the night in over 2 weeks. It started with 3 knocks on my apartment doorways at exactly 2:04 a.m. No voices, no footsteps. No one ever there when I checked. I tried to ignore it. I tried to stay rational, but then the knocking moved to my 3rd-story window, and that's when I realized whatever it is, it's not trying to get in, it's already inside. It started with a knock, just after 2 a.m. 3 slow, steady thuds on the front door. I wasn't even fully awake when I heard it. You know that strange space between dreaming and reality. That's where I was, hovering, until the sound dragged me out of it like cold water. I lay still, barely breathing, heart already pounding harder than it should. For a few seconds, I told myself it was part of the dream, maybe the TV, but I hadn't left it on. And that knock, it sounded deliberate, not rushed, not angry, just slow, intentional. I didn't move. I just listened. The silence that followed was heavier than it should have been. My apartment's usually full of small noises, squeaks from the pipes, the occasional thud from the neighbor upstairs, but tonight, nothing. Just the sound of blood rushing in my ears. I lay there for what felt like forever, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was probably just someone in the building knocking on the wrong door. Then it came again, knock, 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 same rhythm, same exact pressure in each hit. Not like someone impatient, but like they were waiting for me to react. My body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I wanted to get up, check the peephole, maybe even open the door just to get it over with, but I couldn't make myself do it. Something about that knock felt wrong. Not threatening exactly, but off, like whoever was on the other side wasn't just lost or drunk. It felt like they knew I was awake, that I was listening. Eventually it stopped. No footsteps, no voice, no follow-up knock, just that eerie stillness again. After a while, I drifted back to sleep, but it was the kind of sleep where your body rests but your brain never shuts off. I dreamed of shadows standing outside my door, unmoving. The next morning I tried to brush it off, told myself it had to be someone visiting the wrong apartment or a neighbor coming home late. But when I passed the door on my way out for work, I couldn't help but glance down. No scuff marks, no footprints, just the dull shine of the welcome mat I never really liked. The following night, it happened again, 2:04 a.m. This time, I know the exact time because I checked the clock when I jolted awake. Same knock, same rhythm, same heavy silence afterward. It was like déjà vu, except worse because this time, I knew what was coming. I stayed completely still again, like if I didn't move it couldn't find me. It happened a 3rd night, then a 4th, always at the same time, always just 3 knocks. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? That someone keeps knocking on my door in the middle of the night, but I'm too afraid to check. On the 5th night, just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard the knock again, but this time, it came from the window. When the knock came from the window, everything changed. Before that, I could pretend it was someone in the hallway, a real person. Some prankster, maybe even a neighbor messing around. But the window, I live on the 3rd floor. There's no balcony, no fire escape. Nothing outside except empty air and an old maple tree that barely reaches halfway up the building. No one should be able to get to that window. The sound was unmistakable, 3 soft taps, barely audible, but somehow even more unsettling than the knocks at the door. They were lighter, slower, like someone was testing the glass, or didn't want to break it yet. I didn't move for a long time. I just lay there, heart hammering, trying to convince myself I was hearing things. Maybe the tree had brushed against the glass. Maybe an animal, but the tree was too far away, and I've never seen birds out that late. I wanted to believe it was nothing, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Eventually I forced myself to get up. I walked to the window, every step feeling heavier than the last. My fingers hesitated over the curtain. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see anything. But not knowing felt worse. I pulled it back just an inch. My breath fogged the glass. Outside, there was nothing, just the dim orange glow from the streetlight below and the shadows it threw onto the side of the building. The window looked exactly as it always had, closed, locked still. I pressed my forehead to the glass, staring down at the sidewalk, empty, not a soul in sight. But the feeling, that tight, crawling feeling in my chest, didn't go away. I let the curtain fall back into place and backed away slowly, watching the glass as if something might suddenly appear on the other side. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the edge of the couch staring at nothing, too wired to close my eyes. The next morning I found something that made it impossible to deny what was happening. Smudges on the outside of the window. Thin, uneven streaks that looked like long fingers had dragged down the glass. Not handprints, exactly, just marks, as if someone had pressed their skin lightly against it and slowly slid downward. I stood there for a long time, just staring at them, trying to make sense of it. My window isn't easy to reach. No ladder, no ledge, nothing. There's no logical explanation. And yet, there they were. That afternoon, I ordered security cameras. 2 for inside the apartment and 1 to mount just outside my door in the hallway. I wanted to catch whatever was doing this, or at least prove to myself that something was. When the cameras arrived, I set them up immediately. The hallway cam pointed directly at my front door. The others covered the living room and bedroom. That night I lay on the couch again, watching the live feed on my phone, heart in my throat. Just after 2 a.m., the hallway camera picked up the sound. 3 knocks, loud, clear, but on the screen, no one was there. I replayed the footage again and again, looking for anything I might have missed, a shadow, a flicker, anything. But there was nothing. Just my empty hallway, quiet and still, while the audio clearly captured 3 solid knocks. It didn't make sense. My cameras weren't cheap. There's no reason they should have missed someone standing right in front of my door, unless there wasn't anyone there, not anyone I could see. That thought clung to me for the rest of the day like a cold, damp fog. I tried to go about things normally, made coffee, answered emails, even stepped outside for groceries, but everything felt distant, like I was moving through a thin layer of something invisible and heavy. I didn't tell anyone I wanted to, but I knew how it would sound. I barely believed it myself. That night, I checked the cameras again before bed. All feeds were normal. I left the app open on my phone and tried to sleep on the couch, facing the front door. I think I managed a couple hours before the familiar anxiety jolted me awake. 2:04 a.m. no knock this time, but when I looked at the screen, the hallway camera was glitching, static lines tearing across the image, flickering black and white. Then, for just a moment, it went completely dark. And in that split second before the feed cut out, I saw something, a figure, barely visible in the noise and blur, but it was there, tall, unnaturally still, standing directly outside my door. I froze, unable to look away from the screen. The feed returned to normal, just the empty hallway again, but I knew what I'd seen. I scrambled to save the footage, to take a screenshot, anything, but the app glitched, froze, and crashed. When I reopened it, the clip was gone. I sat there for hours, just staring at the door, afraid to blink. At some point, I must have dozed off. When I woke up, it was morning, and everything looked the same. I checked the door, no scratches, no marks. I even opened it and peeked into the hallway. Nothing, just silence and stale apartment air. Later that day, I ran into Mrs. Langley from across the hall. She's lived here for over 30 years and doesn't say much, but today she looked different, pale, unsettled. I asked if she'd heard anything strange lately. She hesitated, then told me she saw something outside my door a few nights ago, something she didn't want to see again. I asked her what it was, but she wouldn't answer, just said she covered her peephole with a cloth and suggested I do the same. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, lights off, watching the hallway feed again. At exactly 2:04 a.m. the knock returned, louder this time, but again, the hallway was empty. Only this time, when I checked the window feed, the screen wasn't black, it was red, like something had covered the lens with blood. I stared at the red-tinted screen, unable to move, my breath stuck somewhere between my chest and throat. The camera pointed at the window had never malfunctioned like that before. Static, yes. Brief blackouts, sure. But this, it wasn't a glitch. It was a deep, smeared red, thick and uneven, like something had been wiped directly over the lens. It didn't move, didn't shift, just sat there like a warning. I didn't go to the window. I couldn't. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to stay away. Instead, I turned off the phone and sat in the dark, knees pulled to my chest, trying to listen. But there was nothing, no wind, no creaking, not even the hum of the refrigerator. Just a silence so complete it felt unnatural. The next morning I forced myself to go check the window. I waited until the sun was fully up just to be sure. I opened the curtain slowly, one finger at a time, heart hammering behind my ribs. The glass was clean, completely clean. No smears, no marks, no sign that anything had been there at all. I stepped closer and leaned in, scanning for the tiniest trace. Nothing. I looked down toward the street. That's when I noticed something I'd never seen before. Across from my building, in the alley next to the bakery, there was an old security mirror mounted high on the wall, one of those dome-shaped ones meant to help with blind spots. It reflected a portion of my building, including, just barely, my window. And in that mirror, even in daylight, I could see something faint. A shadow. It didn't move, didn't shift with the sun. It just stayed there, lingering near my window, like it was waiting for night. I started avoiding sleep after that. I stayed up all night, lights on, watching the cameras, and spent my days walking the city until my legs gave out. But exhaustion always caught up, and the less I slept, the worse things became. On the 4th night, without real rest, I was dozing on the couch when I heard the door handle move. Not knock move. It turned slowly, quietly, like someone testing it. I sat upright so fast my neck cracked. I stared at the door, heart in my throat, waiting for it to turn all the way, but it stopped, hovering at the halfway point, then let go. I rushed to the hallway camera feed, static again. Of course, but for a brief second I caught a blur, something tall and narrow sliding out of the frame toward the stairs. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning something strange happened. I noticed a dark patch forming on the ceiling above my bed, something that hadn't been there before. Faint and circular, like water damage, except the shape wasn't natural. It was long, narrow, almost human. I climbed up on a chair, heart pounding, and touched it with the end of a broomstick. The drywall gave way with a soft crackle. Inside the small opening, tucked between insulation and beams, was a crumpled piece of paper. When I unfolded it, my hands started shaking. It was a photo of me sleeping. I stared at the photo in my hands, unable to breathe. It wasn't old. I could tell by the blankets, by the position of my phone on the nightstand, even by the shirt I was wearing. It had to be taken within the last few nights. Maybe even last night. And the worst part, the angle. It was taken from above, slightly to the left, from the ceiling. Right where I'd found the hole. I dropped the photo and backed away, trembling so badly I nearly tripped over the chair. Something had been in the ceiling, watching me, not outside. Not at the door or the window, inside, just above me. I tore open the hallway closet, grabbed my duffel bag and started stuffing clothes and essentials into it without thinking. I didn't care where I was going. A hotel, a friend's couch, the street, anywhere but here. My plan was to leave that night and never come back. Around 7:30 p.m., the power went out. It wasn't just a blown fuse. I checked the panel, everything was fine. The hallway outside was still lit, just my unit completely dead. Then my phone turned off. It was plugged in, battery at 80%, but the screen went black in my hand and wouldn't turn back on. Panic began to crawl up my spine like ice. I stood in the middle of the apartment, surrounded by silent darkness, and suddenly realized how small the space really was. Nowhere to hide, nowhere to run without opening the front door and stepping into something I didn't understand. At 2:04 a.m. the knocking returned. This time, it wasn't isolated to the door or the window. It came from the walls, from every wall. 3 knocks, perfectly spaced, echoing from each direction, one after the other, like something was circling me from the inside. I clutched the duffel bag and dropped to the floor, squeezing myself into the corner like a child hiding from a nightmare. Then it all stopped. The silence hit harder than the knocks. I sat frozen for what must have been hours, too scared to move, too scared to breathe. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear the door open. But something changed. The air felt wrong, heavy, charged, like I wasn't alone. And then I saw it, not through the peephole, not on a camera, not in a reflection. It was standing in the hallway of my apartment inside. Right there, a figure. Tall, impossibly still, its face obscured by shadow. It didn't move toward me. It didn't speak, but I felt it, pressing into my thoughts, digging into my mind like roots into soil, like it belonged there, like it had always been there. I must have blacked out, because when I opened my eyes, it was morning. The lights were back on. My phone was charging. Everything looked normal, except the photo was gone. And now, every night when I close my eyes, I dream I'm watching myself from the hallway, and I knock 3 times, waiting for me to open the door.